All right. It's 1:04 by my watch, and I'm calling the November 18th, 2024 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board to order. Could we call the roll, please?
All right, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Here.
Mr. Mitsuno,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Mr. Henningsen,
Here.
and Mr. Hancock is absent. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The public may access and participate in the meeting electronically. Instructions for doing so are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Staff will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. If applicants in the meeting room have team members attending virtually who will need to present, please make that known when you come to the podium. Everyone who is participating virtually, please mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
No.
I will need to recuse myself from the flow on day
Okay.
discussion, unfortunately.
Okay. Thanks. Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
I don't have anyone online.
All right, great. We do not have any consent agenda items today or work sessions. We have two regular review items, and we are going to switch the order and do what was scheduled to be the second one first. And that one is ARB 2024-50, Flow Hyundai.
Good afternoon, everyone. The application being reviewed today is a final site plan and architecture to establish the Hyundai auto dealership with associated site improvements. Site is located along Route 29 and bounded by Berkmar Drive to the west and two automotive dealerships to the north and south. The ARB reviewed an initial site plan and preliminary architecture for this development in December of 2023 and revised architecture in August of this year. There's some landscaping issues with the site plan submitted. The plan shows large trees with ornamental trees and evergreen shrubs interspersed along Route 29 frontage north of the site entrance, but low landscaping is shown south of the site entrance. Revising the plan to show increased landscaping in this area would be appropriate. Along the southern perimeter of the site, large trees are shown, but the narrow planting area directly north of the Malloy Ford building will unlikely allow for a healthy growth of the large shade trees. The site plan shows two more parking spaces that are required, revising the plan to replace these two parking spaces along the southern perimeter of the site with tree outings would provide a more appropriate growing area. There also appears to be utility conflicts with the two trees shown northeast of the Malloy Ford building. Shifting these trees into the planting area south of the Route 29 south site entrance may be one way to avoid the conflict and provide a consistent appearance along the frontage. Also updated in this site plan is in the planting strip north of the site entrance. The plan has been revised to include a concrete display plan. This additional display does not align with the approved SP and will require an amendment to the application. The ARB has consistently not approved this type of display space because it detracts from the organized parking layout, the landscape area, and the orderly appearance of the entrance core. This space should be removed prior to final site plan approval. Regarding the building architecture, the proposed design of the showroom remains contemporary, but the removal of the step down of the fascia and the reduced fascia depth creates a scale that better relates to the entrance surround and window grids. However, the fascia still appears to float at the top of the elevation. revising the design to shift the corridor columns inside the building to the outside would help ground the building and offer elements that relate to historic architecture. Regarding the final site plans, staff recommends approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. Happy to answer any questions you all may have.
All right, thanks a lot for that presentation. I guess we'll start with Tara. Do you have any questions?
No, thanks, Chris.
Dade?
No questions. Thank you, Chris.
Right?
I have to recuse.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I don't have any questions. So if the applicant has a presentation, now would be a good time.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Schaefer. I'm with Design Develop. Thank you, Chris, for the thorough staff report and that summary. So this will be a brief presentation, but I did want to touch on kind of the 17 items for recommendation and talk through some of our thinking on that. Since the last time that you saw us building, we did make the revisions that were requested, at least sort of 2 of the 3 major action items, by removing the step down fascia to kind of eliminate that asymmetry and to continue to reduce the mass of that fascia line in an effort to visually keep this building from getting too top heavy, which I think was some of the comments we heard previously. We reduced the height of the fascia as well. And so, these sort of small moves, and the step down to eliminate the step down and make this more symmetrical front facade was actually a relatively big move. But the collection of these moves that have happened over the past couple of reviews, including the grounding elements towards the rear, the reduced height of the fascia, the reduced overhang, and the elimination of that step down has really sort of rationalized the appearance of this building. It made it much more relatable, less contemporary, and I think it's moved in the right direction. So thank you all for your feedback and your comments. This is just a slide that compares the last time you'd seen it. Chris showed a slide that's very similar to this. One of the initial comments that we heard when we were first presenting this as an initial ARB approval was the idea of this carving out of the box, which I think really started to make a lot of sense to us. And so this grounding element that's on the rear side, these columns that kind of go to grade, have quite an effect on that. And so I think when we look at one of the primary points of discussion being moving the interior columns to exterior of the building, we think that's a challenge for a couple of reasons. And so the first, on the left side of the screen that you have here, is some of the precedent images that have been in our booklet for a while now. And our original scheme was very similar to this top one, which had the very, very large overhang, very top heavy appearance, this kind of heavy fascia that's floating on top of a glass box. But we've also had these 2 in here. And I think what starts to happen when you move the diagonal steel columns to the exterior is there's a natural requirement to sort of increase the fascia depth, increase that overhang to get those columns in there. And all of a sudden we're getting kind of back to this very heavy eave line. As you can see in this image on the right side of the screen, which is what's proposed now, the overhang is much smaller. It's only 3 feet. The grounding element in the rear is much more substantial. And when we were looking at precedent images, this is that kind of like cohesive building that's starting to tie together that I think we were saying, hey, that's looking a lot more, like I can understand that a lot more than I can maybe this precedent image here. So I understand the intent of moving the diagonal columns to the exterior of the building. I think it's a challenge from balancing the weight of the fascia, the visual weight of it. And also the diagonal shiny steel columns are a little bit, even for this corridor, kind of out of place. We don't see too many of like the tree canopy columns. So by tucking them inside, they remain sort of a visible element at night, certainly help like support it from the interior, but it doesn't become this sort of eye-catching showpiece. So for those reasons, we'd ask to consider item 1 on the following changes. Because I think it's more successful as this eroded box without those elements proud of the glass. One of the comments dealt with parapet heights, and we just wanted to provide an image that provided a little bit of clarity on that. The parapet heights on the side here are 4 feet. And here it drops to, no, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is 3 feet here. You can see where it drops to 4 feet in this kind of lowered roof area right here. And then it's back up to 3 feet here. The RT units that we have proposed from our mechanical engineer are 3 feet on these little ones on the service side. And then this one is about just under 5 feet here. So, and it's in the middle of the building. It steps very far away. So we're very confident that it will not be visible from the entrance corridor. Following the other comments, the recommended approval with the following changes is certainly, number 2, it has to do with the standard window glass note. Is totally fine with that, and we'll add that to our drawing. Same with note 3. We'll provide a drawing for note 4 that has a building section and shows these mechanical units in place. We just wanted to get this in front of you today. And we can add that standard mechanical equipment note as well, which is number 7. Revising the lighting plans, which are 8, 9, and 10, all make a lot of sense. And I think that the landscaping comments do make sense. There's a little bit of question. The building is so close along this side here. And this is something that staff have not seen yet. This is the latest iteration that'll be going in soon. But I just wanted to say, to show you where this was headed was to shift more landscaping to the south, which was a recommendation today. But the building being so close along here, I think, the primary goal of the landscaping on this site is to screen the parked cars, and the building is doing a very, very effective job of that. So the actual view into the site as you're headed northbound on 29 is very much limited by this existing building that's very close to the adjacent parking line. So we'd like to reconsider the removal of 2 parking spaces here. Because I think this area is effectively screened by this landscaping here. And then I'm not sure we would be buying too much in the way of screening by removing those parking spaces. Regarding the concrete display pad, that is something that we noted staff's language on that. It was very clear. And so we went back to Hyundai at that point and requested a conditional variance, which was approved. So we agree with removing the concrete display pad. It's not a requirement of this project anymore. And we understand that it would require resubmission of the SP, and that's a route we're not going to pursue. So, with all those kind of revisions and changes, we're hopeful to have board approval and work with staff on the next steps. But if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thanks for that presentation. We'll start with Dade.
Thank you for your presentation. I don't think I have any questions.
Thanks. Tara?
The only question is that when you around the landscaping, it appears that could you confirm that the conflicts with the utilities have been addressed with some of the plantings?
That would be in this location. I don't think it has been yet. Chris, is this an area you were targeting as a concern?
Yes, and just quickly looking at it, they both still appear very close to that, or what, I can't recall what type of line it is, but that buried sewer line along the limits of disturbance.
We have an interior stormwater line that filters into here. I think shifting these plantings further south, we can accommodate staff's requirements, and it may even be the addition of some of these lower shrubs and plants come over here as well. I think that's staff probably like to see that. So this was a progress plot that I kind of just asked for this morning kind of thing as we were continuing to work through this. Like I said, as you see, there's the concrete display pad is still on this, but it won't be something that shows up in our next site plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't have any questions. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
Nobody online.
All right, in that case, the ARB will now go into discussion. Guess we'll start with Dade again.
Sure. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the developments that the applicant has made in the proposal. And I think I think the volume is much clearer and more rational as the applicant suggested. And I think is a nice development. Initially, I think we asked for the columns at the exterior, and that certainly would be more directly related to the precedence of porches, but looking at, I think, the visual presentation, I think the form is clear and rational and relates to some of those strong formal precedents in the county in that way. On the landscape front, appreciate the applicant bringing the current plan. While I understand the request for the relief on the 2 extra spaces that could hold trees, I think that would be a benefit to the project. I think, especially as we think about the perception of the building to the south of the site as folks are traveling south on 29, just in terms of having a greater continuity of trees and planting there. So would support maintaining that requirement.
All right, Tara?
Thanks. I'm in agreement with Dade that I think the exterior columns, I think the applicant makes a good case for the maintaining them on the interior rather than moving them to the exterior. So I think that argument makes sense. I think for the mechanical equipment, I would just ask that whatever information gets provided to the staff incorporates any curbs or any other information around the height of that mechanical equipment. Grateful to the applicant for considering and making the change around the display pad and ensuring that the landscaping is coordinated with the utilities in the next submission. And I am inclined to keep the condition on the parking spaces on the border as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'm in agreement. I think the moves that were made were steps in the right direction, and I agree that I think having the columns on the interior is appropriate also. Regarding the landscaping, I think Dade had a good point that it's also about kind of that neighboring building kind of screening that also. So I would support keeping that comment, but I think in general it's a good proposal, and I think the changes that were made were good. So we could take a look at the recommended motion.
The motion, recommended motion is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. Based on your conversation, I've struck through number 1, which is the recommendation regarding the steel columns.
Are there any other tweaks to any of the other conditions that anybody would like to make?
Or any other recommendations?
Yep, that looks good to me.
Okay, I don't either. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ARB 2024-50 Flow Hyundai with the conditions listed in the staff report amended to remove item 1 to revise the drawings to move the steel columns to the exterior.
I'll
Thank
second the
you.
motion.
All right, thanks. We could put that to a vote.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
then
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, so we will move on to our other regular review item today, which is ARB 2024-49, High School Center 2.
This is a second review of a site plan amendment and an architectural design for the new high school center building that's to be constructed in the Lambs Lane campus adjacent to Albemarle High School on the Hydraulic Road entrance corridor. The ARB provided preliminary comments on this project in August of this year. The comments were made on a variety of topics. The design of the building hasn't changed much since that preliminary review, but this round of review does include some additional detail and revisions to address some of the issues identified in August. One of the comments from the previous review was to provide the perspectives showing views from the entrance corridor without the landscaping, and those perspectives have been submitted. They do help explain the appearance of the building from the entrance corridor street. And the views show that the upper portions of the one-story building forms that are located near the main entrance and at the south corner of the building will have some visibility from the street. And the tops of those walls that are the parts that are the most visible from the street are blank. We've recommended that additional treatments be considered to reduce the blankness in those areas. Proposed materials and colors were another focus of the preliminary comments. Board members asked for a comparison of the existing materials to the proposed materials, and this slide shows the comparison that was provided. One of the issues related to color was a request to consider a lighter color for the bronze metal that's used mostly at the top of the building to coordinate more with the existing building and for less contrast with the mountain backdrop. That change was not made. A lighter color, like the gray shown in the elevation drawings, may be more appropriate for the equipment screen and other elements near the roof. New details have been included on the brick, and they show that some areas of the walls will have brick of mixed colors, forming a pattern across the building, and some brick is also shaped and tapered. Samples for 3 of the 4 proposed brick colors have been submitted. Material samples are behind you on display. No sample was provided for the buff tan color, and there are inconsistent references to that brick in the drawings, so it's not entirely clear where that brick will be used. There are also no samples submitted for the metal mesh for the equipment screen or the orange color for the solar shades. Screening of the rooftop equipment was another concern in the preliminary review. The drawings have been updated to show the locations of the fume hoods that were in question, and they are located behind equipment screens. Landscape was also an issue in the preliminary review. There was a recommendation to add low-level landscaping along the entrance corridor frontage. That frontage currently has a very sparse landscaping, and low-level planting was recommended to bring the frontage closer to entrance corridor standards while maintaining the distant view to the mountains. No landscaping has been proposed for safety reasons. Board members also requested that the applicant consider adding some variation to the design of the hand railing, and the applicant has chosen not to do that. The lighting plan was included in the submittal. The cut sheets that were provided are not legible, so we've recommended that those be updated. And we recommended some other revisions for standard information on the lighting plan. Overall, our recommendation is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. We retained the recommendations on the bronze metal and the low-level landscaping so that the board can make final recommendations on them today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thanks for that presentation. Guess we'll start with Dave.
Yes, Margaret, are there any other precedents for waiving landscape requirements for security requirements? And is there any documentation of the security requirements that have been provided by the applicant?
No, I think on both counts. Possibly we might have revised some landscaping and maybe one of the schools out on Western Corridor. It's been a long time since we've looked at that. I don't remember the details.
Thank you.
All right, Tara,
No, no questions. Thank you.
right?
Mark, can you remind me how many feet this is off the hydraulic road corridor?
I think I had that in the staff report. I think it's a few hundred feet back. I don't recall. And look it up. I'm not finding it quickly. If you want to
That's fine.
continue.
Yeah, I can.
All right, I do not have any questions, so if the applicant has a presentation, now would be the time for it.
My name is Kagan Squire. I'm a project manager with Albemarle County Public Schools. I'm working on High School Center 2. Joined with me today is the Director of Building Services, Matt Wortman, and then our consultants from Quinn Evans Architect, who can speak more detailed to the design of this project. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kylan, the project manager with them.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I'm Kylan Shirley with Quinn Evans Architects. First, thank you for accommodating our schedule change as we had some travel issues. Appreciate it. What we'll do is just focus on the discussion points that were in the report and comments provided back to us. There are additional comments and requests that we'll address, of course, of putting some kind of standard language on the drawings and get that back to you and the light fixtures for the site lighting as well. But wanted to focus our presentation on some of the questions and discussion points that were provided. So materials and colors, the blankness of the upper walls of the one-story building forms that were noted, some rooftop equipment, and then ending on the landscape along the entrance corridor. So just very quickly, the overall context of the site here is the Albemarle High School site, of course. The building services building that will be demolished is the site for our building, kind of at the southern end. We focused quite a bit on how to improve the overall campus with this project. There's already a lot of complex stuff happening on the site with comings and goings and operations of the school throughout the day, throughout the school year, and with athletics and the other activities that happen there. So it was important to make sure that the site overall accommodated all of that, as well as the intensified use of adding this building. So zooming in on the site itself, the southern entrance to the campus that exists now at the Georgetown Green neighborhood, which you see in the bottom right of the image, is maintained at the entrance corridor road, hydraulic road. That entrance driveway changes a little bit and comes around the back side of the new building, noted here, the HSC2 right on it. That's the plan. The parking lots there stay pretty much as is, with some very minor modifications to the entrances into the parking lots. And then throughout the site, the driveways stay, but with kind of striping and other improvements to clarify circulation. The building faces Albemarle High School's main entrance. The main entrance is at the northern tip of the building. And then the kind of varied facade there of the L shape faces the entrance corridor. Those are all treated as kind of primary facades that face the parking lot and face the new pedestrian pathway that curves along in between the parking lot and the building there. And that connects directly to sidewalks coming from the south of the site to handle and improve access to the site for those students that arrive on foot from that direction, which is quite a few. In between the two buildings and in the notch of the L shape are all outdoor landscaped areas that face the street, face the entrance corridor. So in addition to the building, we think there'll be improved landscape and just kind of campus views or views into the campus because of the improvements to the site, in addition to the building. Looking at the floor plan of the building, areas for refuse, loading docks, and mechanical equipment is all on the opposite side of the building from the entrance corridor to be screened. On the left side there is the trash and loading area for the kitchen, and then at the bottom is a screened equipment area, which is actually down a level because of the drop in grade on the site. We have a lower level to further, kind of conceal things from the entrance corridor side where there is access to mechanical room, access to a data center space, and then a screened enclosure around generators, transformers, and other mechanical equipment there at that subfloor. Zooming around to an aerial view of the front side of the building here that faces the entrance corridor, you can see how the varied facades and kind of all the ins and outs are treated as primary facades that face the entrance corridor. The different materials are mainly brick, that's the primary material, and the primary color is kind of very typical orange, red, in keeping with the historic character of many of the buildings around the county. There's a secondary brick color. It's a gray blend. There's two different bricks that are blended together. I'll get more to that in just a moment. There are accent areas of the facade, which are metal wall panels, standing seam and kind of flat seam metal panels in combination, depending where you are. They are dark bronze color, as was noted. The metal roof fascia is also dark bronze, and then the perforated metal screen on the roof, same thing. I apologize, I was not able to get a sample of that in time for today, but we can certainly provide it. Looking at the three brick colors here, or photos of them, I do have a sample of that buff or tan brick that we were not able to have last time. And this view is the west face, and it's a little bit flattened because, of course, the building has a lot of angles to it, but this is the view from, or that faces west, the facade of the building that faces west towards the field house of Albemarle High School. So it's the non-entrance quarter side of the building, and you can see some vertical accent panels of this tan brick. It's utilized in that location because it ties into some of the materials on the inside at the window jambs. So it's a little bit of an inside-outside connection in terms of color and materiality. This is the only place where the buff brick is used, just as that minor accent color. This is the south facade of the building, and it shows you where that striated and layered pattern of the two different gray bricks comes into play. That patterning is used where portions of the building protrude out or bump out, or one-story elements that have kind of a different volumetric expression than the main portions or main volumes of the building, which are treated with the more typical orange red brick. The intent with this pattern is to create something that has a little bit of a natural look to it in the way that stone is layered, sedimentary rock, or the striations in granite of kind of different quartz layers and things. So it's a little bit of a biophilic design reference that's being made, but we think it'll be quite subtle and create a background texture that brings just some more character to these portions of the building. It shows up at the front door here. This is kind of a real close zoom in of the front door on the right there. You see how there'll be signage on that upper portion of the wall. We don't know exactly what that signage will be like. We don't know what the school will be named yet. It won't be High School Center 2, but that will take up that upper portion of the wall there. So moving on to the sunscreens on the back, we also did not have a sample of that last time. It is color, it's a color that is intended to match the brick fairly closely, so it kind of blends in and is a subtle variation on that facade. Those are just on the south facade that I showed a moment ago in elevation, which you see on the left side here. You can also see in this view the equipment screens that are kind of down low on that lower level in this view. So here's the color, and you can see how it coordinates with the brick. Okay, shifting to the rooftop screen here. We did decide at this point to stick with the darker color. The darker color has been selected as a contrasting color to the kind of more neutral or lighter colors of the brick material for the metal panels. We feel that a contrasting color is needed instead of something that kind of blends in. And also we wanted to keep it a more earthy, natural material rather than something that kind of contrasted in the other direction in terms of maybe like a brighter, shinier, metallic metal panel, more like the ones on Albemarle High School. We didn't want to go that direction because it didn't feel like it fit into the earth toned kind of overall color scheme of the entire building. So that screen is what you see there, sticking up a little bit above the rest of the roof. We feel that, yes, it sticks up, but overall, it's not a very prominent element. Here from the front of the building, you just barely see it up there. We looked at, of course, kind of changing the color in response to the comment. And we felt like it, kind of gave it a two-tone look that was a little odd. So we want to keep all the metal the same color ultimately. So if it becomes, something that we need to continue talking about or working on, we'll work with you on that. Did just pull in 2 examples of other buildings on entrance corridors that had elements that kind of stuck up of a darker color, because not as a comparison that, we need to say this has been done before, we should be able to do it, but only because it just gives you an example of what that dark metal panel color will look like in reality instead of just our renderings. So on the left is a UVA health building on Ivy, and on the right is the commercial building that's just actually down the street from our site. They both have dark metal elements up at the roof line. Okay, to address the 1-story walls, those volumes are left fairly simple. It is correct that we have probably 4 to 5 feet in that ballpark of brick without any cornice detailing or anything other than a gravel stop roof edge. We left those, blank, essentially to keep them quite simple. And it also matches with what the functions on the inside of the building are. It's a clinic and some office spaces and storage spaces. So they need privacy. They don't necessarily need windows into the back side of the clinic there. You just barely see them on the left lower portion. Here is the view from the entrance corridor. So you'll just see the tops of them. It is quite far. It's about, depending on where you're measuring from the building, it's about 300 or 400 feet from the entrance corridor. So any detail there would be fairly obscured anyways, just because of the distance. But also, it is not just blank brick. The rendering on the right just shows it as gray, right? But in reality, the texture of the images above that you see here show what the striation pattern will actually be. So when you're close to the building, it'll read as very textured, rather than a blank monolithic mass. The last thing we wanted to address was the roof screening. There is one piece of equipment that is outside of a roof screen. Everything else, I'm going to zoom in a bit here. Everything else is inside of these screens that you see. They are a matching metal panel color. There are a few small exhaust fans that are screened outside of the main large enclosure on the roof where air handling equipment is. On the top right there, you see though a fume hood exhaust, which we hadn't located finally at our last meeting, but we're able to push it back behind this screen where, yes, the top of it does stick up above the screen a bit. It's quite a tall device because it's exhausting chemicals and things from a science lab. It will not be visible in front of the screen from the primary views on the entrance corridor. If you're looking very closely, maybe with binoculars, I think you'll see it above the screen. Even if we put it inside the screen, it would stick up unless we made the screen much taller. So we felt that putting it outside the screen and just behind it was better than putting it inside the screen and increasing the size of the screen. It would make the overall screen quite large and I think overly prominent. So we felt like this was a little bit better of a solution, even though it left the hood exhaust outside of the screen. And the last thing to address here is the landscaping at the frontage, and I'll ask Kagan to help me here. There are, in addition to the security concerns though, these diagrams show the location of a water line and fiber optic lines that are right along the sidewalk, along the entrance corridor there. The fiber optic line is being installed, I think, very soon by the school division, and the water line is existing. In the top right is a diagram from the water authority showing, they have a 10, I think it's 10 meters, is that right? 10-meter clear zone, 5 on each side of a water line. So we're not sure how we can plant in that anyways, based on their guidelines. Additionally, the fiber optic line is there too. So those are hindrances to planting there. We don't want to be planting on top of that. And Kagan, I'll let you speak to the security.
So this is just a view off of the entry corridor. right before that Ben Hurt Drive that is centered pretty much right with Albemarle High School. You can kind of see there's already some trees and landscaping along there, which will remain, but there's still a clear line of sight to the parking lot, and then where the new Center Two building will be. So again, kind of where the existing building services building is about where Center Two will be. Okay, so this is a perspective view just past the previous entry that Ben Hurt Drive on the facing Albemarle High School. It has open, clear line of sight, which is highly recommended to be maintained for security reasons. I'd like to share a statement from ACPS's Director of School Security or Safety and Security. So, in accordance with SEPTID principles, it is important to maintain clear lines of sight to our buildings to aid in maintaining a safe and secure environment at this location. Albemarle High School and the newly designed Center 2 are in a highly populated area of Albemarle County, and there is a high traffic area for vehicular, commercial, and foot traffic in close proximity to the school grounds for both facilities. Activity that takes place on the school grounds can be influenced by the surrounding community, and one of the safety and security priorities is to limit unwelcomed and unauthorized access by individuals. In the absence of a fixed perimeter to regulate and limit access to the school grounds, which is not a current solution, it is important to maintain clear lines of sight to the boundaries of the school grounds so that staff can monitor the movement of individuals entering and leaving the campus both visually and via the use of cameras. I understand the importance of foliage and landscaping to aid in the aesthetics of the grounds, although it is my recommendation that open lines of sight to the areas where people and vehicles can access the property should be maintained. That's it. Thank you.
I was gonna say too, if I could address the precedent question. I don't know if we're out of time, but there was in the spring of 2019, there was a trailer that the school division brought before the ARB at Brownsville Elementary School. And it's my recollection that there were some, what's the word I'm looking for? Deviations, I suppose you could say, from the entrance corridor landscaping requirements as a result of that application. So there is some precedent for school properties for relaxing those requirements.
All right, well, thanks for the presentation. We'll just see if any board members have questions, starting with Frank.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you guys address the mortar colors on these various brick samples so we understand what from a textural standpoint, what they will look
Sure.
and feel like?
So I think we have mortar samples back there,
Okay.
and the intent is that the mortar and the brick color fairly closely match to give it a monolithic appearance. There should be an orangish one that goes with the orange and a grayish one that goes with the gray bricks. And then, I didn't bring it, but with the buff brick as well, a buff mortar that will match that.
I guess other question with regard to the landscaping issue and understanding the precedent and concerns over security. As I look at the image that you guys, the perspective from hydraulic, to me, it seems like the primary objective is just to sort of screen the cars that are parked in that lot, which is sort of just off the street. Yeah, yep. So I'm curious as to what the limit is for the service authority. Are you allowed to plant any kind of shrubs in an easement, or is that prohibited?
I think there have been occasions where shrubs have been allowed, trees would not be. I don't know if the applicant has put that question to Service Authority.
We have not yet.
Thanks. Those are my only questions.
Dade?
Let's see, thank you for the renderings, from the entrance corridor. Those don't seem to show any visible roof membranes from the entrance corridor. Can you verify that the roof won't be visible?
We don't believe it will be let's see if I can get back to that. Well, no, we don't have the buildings in here. I believe it was the renderings that were shared in your presentation at the beginning that showed it, but if we've gotten all of the three-dimensional topography correct in all of our modeling, we don't believe you'll be looking down at any roofs. You should be kind of right there at that level. You know, the curvature of the road, though, it does have a little bit of a slope to it, or, you know, it kind of has a rise as you move across the site. I don't believe we'll see it, but we can't guarantee that 100% that you won't see just a little bit, you know, as you go over the hill there.
And what is the proposed roof membrane color?
It's a black EPDM membrane roof.
Thank you.
All right, Tara?
No questions. Thank you then.
All right, I don't have any questions either. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
I don't even.
All right, and nobody in person either, so the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we will start with Tara.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think as far as the relevant issues, I think from the perspective of the metal on the building, I can certainly see that maybe in the renderings, the dark color as it's shown, and has more of like a matte appearance that I appreciate the applicant raising a couple of the precedent images that I think in practice, they do tend to have a little bit of a reflective quality to them that might bring in some of what's happening in the sky. So I'm inclined to be open to the dark bronze color. And I guess especially speaking to Dade's question around the EPDM membrane, I think the similarity between those two kind of makes a little bit, you know, that there's a logic to it. I think around the question of blankness around the one-story volumes, I think I really appreciate staff's attention to the questions of blankness, typically around a lot of the projects. I think in this case, because the volumes are of a smaller scale relative to the building as a whole, that I think that they work as simple volumes that deviate from the larger mass of the building. And so I'm inclined to not have the applicant address the appearance of blankness on that one. With respect to the landscaping along the entrance corridor, I'm certainly sympathetic and understanding of the higher demands for safety that are placed on the county school buildings and keeping students safe. I would ask, I don't think the intention is to provide larger trees or shrubs in that area that would necessarily obstruct view. So I would still ask the applicant to consider some sort of landscape treatment that doesn't rise to the point of obstructing views in which a person could be concealed or something like that. Because I do believe that there are treatments that are relatively low impact that could improve the appearance on the edge of the corridor without providing a meaningful impediment to student safety. Other than that, I really appreciate your presentation and thanks for your work on this project.
All right, thanks. Dade?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you to the applicant for the presentation. I think you said it very well, Taro, in terms of landscaping, and would agree wholeheartedly with asking the applicant to look at solutions that consider student safety and visibility, but still respect the corridor and provide some improvement there. And I think similarly agree with your remarks about the low volumes. I think in the overall composition, the local blankness in those is not a concern for me. I think I see the metal color maybe somewhat differently, and while I do appreciate the precedents at the other locations, you know, one of them was not subject to ARB review. It was a university project, and I think because the mountain view is so significant here, and the sky is a big factor, I do think that the contrast, at least as it's depicted in the renderings, is a bit jolting. I think from my perspective, and I would like to request that the applicant continue to consider other metal colors that would be less visually apparent. I think there's almost an inversion, I think, in the color palette going from lighter at the ground plane to darkest at the sky that is perhaps not in keeping with more traditional ways of gradating the building and its color.
All right, thanks. Frank?
I tend to agree with Dade with regard to the metal color. I think the mountains are the key feature as you're driving hydraulic, and existing high school does, I think, a fairly good job of being conspicuous or just not noteworthy architecturally, which in this case, I think is an asset in that location. I would agree with Dade. I would encourage the applicant to consider other colors. Also do not have concerns about blankness. I think if anything, some of these elevations feel too busy. There's a lot going on. I feel like you could probably simplify, save money, and not really, and maybe have a positive impact on the overall architecture. I would also concur that while safety is certainly a consideration, I think low-growing shrubs along hydraulic would be a vast improvement over what's there now, and just screen the cars for those driving by. I wasn't completely clear about the orange fins that protrude from the side of the building and what those are intended to do, and I'm sorry I didn't ask about that earlier. Again, they felt just like they added confusion to the overall elevation. So maybe would ask that you at least consider alternatives. I think that's it for me.
Thanks. I agree with what's been said. I do think some kind of landscaping along the corridor would be I think would be an improvement. I agree with everyone that the localized blankness is not really an issue to me either, and I think that striation of the brick helps that situation as well. I actually agree with Tara about the dark bronze. At the risk of injecting personal opinion, I just like it. So so I guess we're split, but since the comment is asking you to consider changing it, you know, I think you should consider that, but I like it how it is now. So if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
So the recommended motion is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. And just from the discussion, it sounds like there may be a few changes to this list of comments. Let's see. Number 4 was related to the blankness of those one-story volumes. It sounds like everyone is fine with that being removed. 11 is the comment regarding the low-level landscaping along the frontage, and that it uses the word consider, so it sounds like that's probably fine to retain.
It's an open question. It seemed like there was unanimity that some landscaping would be appropriate. I don't know whether consider should be changed to the word. That's
I'd be comfortable with,
provide.
yeah, strengthening that a little bit.
adjusted number 11 to read, improve the appearance of the EC frontage with low-level landscaping to screen parked cars, to help screen parked cars.
Yeah, Margaret, I think it's great. I think the intention is that, yeah, the appearance of the cars should be softened. I guess the only thing is I want to make sure that they have the flexibility, like if it goes into going back and forth around the safety issues. I could be fine with the height of this, like the height of the plantings being limited so that the cars aren't completely screened, but so like help screen the appearance of parked cars. Some room for them to work.
Sure, help is there. I left it out when I read through it, sorry.
Great. No, that's good. That sounds good.
And number 3 is the recommendation about the bronze colored metal, and that does have the word consider as well.
You guys
I
want to
think
talk
as
about the
Chris
middle?
observed, it sounded like we had a split decision.
We
but
have a
I-
split-
but I think Frank and I maybe were advocating for something other than consider.
I think you guys have a stronger opinion about it than I personally do.
I do, not because it doesn't go with the building. I just think it dark in the context of the landscape itself. In the sky, I'm not sure it's actually gonna reflect any sky. But I could be wrong.
I guess I was open to being swayed by my colleagues. Um,
My personal opinion is that, I think the rendering is making it look flatter and darker than it would be in reality. I think dark bronze, I mean, it's obviously it's dark, but it's, a little bit less, like the rendering make it look almost like it's black, and I think in reality it's not quite as stark of a contrast. I worry that with the combination of the other colors, which are pretty close to each other, I guess, like the overall effect would be a little bit more washed out, but if that was changed, but you know,
And I don't totally hear where you're coming from, Chris. I think in addition to the contrast, I think for me, the issue is also just the tonality and I think because it's more an edge of the sky, a lighter, cooler color. Well, the gray on the existing building from time to time blends. And I think as Frank observed, the overall palette of the existing building, while it doesn't have the same contrast and pop, if you will, that's proposed for this, is part of what I think helps it be the background in the foreground, to the view.
I guess I'll clarify too. I mean, I feel like that contrast is a good thing where it's shown on like the canopies and columns, and I don't know that there is kind of a larger quantity of dark bronze on the roof with the equipment screening being that color, and I don't know that I have a strong feeling about that remaining dark bronze. I think the contrast on some of the elements is appropriate. I'd consider to something a little
Yeah.
bit.
I appreciate that's a good nuance.
Yeah, and I think the one with the context shows the mechanical, I think the mechanical screen is a big portion of that because I think in one of the renderings, it was also like where the valley of those two mountains intersected. So it further emphasized the
Yeah.
mechanical screen? I guess like in the interest of providing the applicant with good information going forward and to try to figure out a way to, for instance, like Dade or Frank, would you feel as strongly about the fascia color if the mechanical screen were a different color?
Probably not. I don't, what's the dimension on that fascia screen?
Are you asking about the, like the height of the
Yeah,
roof
the height,
edge?
yep.
It'll be about 4 inches where it's brick, and then at the canopies, it's more like 8 to 12, depending where you are. So it's fairly thin line around the front building. And you know what, actually at the higher volumes, the roof overhang is 1'6", I want to say.
And then is the panel used at that clear story window as well, so that
I'm sorry.
at the upper roof with the clear story window is,
What kind of panel is that?
um,
Yeah, there's a little bit of metal panel mixed in with the storefront, where there's, something inside, or kind of on the edges. So that'll be a flat seamed panel that matches in color to the bronze. And then the fascia above that, where the roof overhangs, is that 1'4" dimension.
The vertical metal paneling below the fascia is also bronze, is that correct?
Yes.
So if you get, what's the total dimension, not just the fascia, but
So where there is metal panel below the fascia, gosh, I don't see it on this elevation. It's, I'm gonna say it's between 3 and 4 feet. I won't take an exact number and be wrong, but it's in that ballpark there. That looks higher than 3 to 4. Maybe it's 4 to 5. Excuse me.
I think to Chris's point, so I think, well, the canopy and the scale of that metal on the one hand is not something that really rises to the same level of concern. I think I'm trying to express about the others. I think the extent and the dimension of the metal at the other roof edges starts to, and the screening together, make it kind of a dark mass of greater scale than I think is appropriate.
and it's exacerbated by the fact that it's sky behind it, not.
Right. Yeah,
woods or-
yeah, if it were woods or dark backdrop or.
So this shows it, this screen is a different, Margaret, would you mind zooming into the elevation on the, yeah. So that's showing the two-toned. Is that correct?
In these colored elevations, fairly diagrammatic. So that does show it as lighter. I think we were intending it's in the distance, so we're making it lighter. But yeah, I think that top right image does show, what a two-tone scheme would look like essentially. And there it's a gray that pretty close to matching what the brick gray would be.
So to me, I feel like one solution, aside from just requesting the lighter brick color, would be to request that the applicant make the change to the screening and then could decide whether or not to go for the darker bronze or the lighter to coordinate with the screening. That is if we, yeah.
Screening mean this piece.
Yeah, the largest of the masses becomes a lighter metal, and then the applicant would have the option of either going with the lighter fascia as well, or sticking with the dark fascia that they like. And so that would reduce the overall impact of the metal while leaving the option open for them to consider the design response that they would prefer. That's a sort of middle ground option that I have in mind without us deciding one way or the other all the way.
Right.
Of course, I'd suggest, but aside from just going with the lighter color and making it a condition.
Well, there's a good chance once all the landscaping's in place, you're not gonna see much of this. Sure, I guess, the trees. Do you have you've got a rendering showing perspective with and without landscaping, right?
I think you're correct. The trees that are planted around the pedestrian pathways that are in between the entrance corridor and the building will likely
Certainly help
obscure the
break
building
up.
entirely at some point.
Does, it feels incongruous in some respects though with existing.
Yeah. It would coordinate
Building,
better
but
with the site if
it-
it
yeah.
matched the metal as well.
Yeah, it just feels out of place. If we make it a condition, I guess it would come back and we could look at it. We say consider, they don't have to bring it back. They can do
Yeah, I
whatever.
think it will be dark bronze if we say.
I agree.
I mean, you may bring it back and we look at it and go, yeah, the dark's better.
If I understand correctly, you're essentially asking us to provide some examples of alternates. Sure.
Is okay with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to resolve it.
I've revised number 3 from consider a lighter color for the bronze medal to provide illustrations of alternative lighter metal colors for review. My understanding is that you all want to see those revisions. The current recommendation is for approval. We have done this previously with, the recommendation is for approval with this one remaining thing to come back to the board for review. So that can work.
That makes sense.
For me.
Okay, in that case, anybody feel like doing a motion?
I will move for approval of the certificate of appropriateness for ARB 2024-49 High School Center 2 with conditions listed in the staff report amended as follows. Item 3 is changed to provide illustrations of alternative lighter metal colors for review by the ARB. Item 4 is removed. Item 11 is modified to read, improve the appearance of the EC frontage with low-level landscaping to help screen parked cars.
I'll second that. So if we could put that to a vote.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank
All right, thanks a lot. So we will now move on to other business. First is approval of the November 4th, 2024 minutes. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I would love to move to approve those.
I'll second.
All right, thanks. If we could put that to a vote.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Who made the motion?
Uh,
Second,
David and Frank, second.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
and Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, do any board members or staff have any additional items? Okay.
Any further update, Margaret, on the corridor or whatever
No update,
guidelines?
sorry.
I had one quick observation. Some applicants, when they upload their documents, like upload the entire set, which was the case with this application. And it does make it very difficult to retrieve from the Laserfiche online. I
Yeah.
don't know if we might update our submittal standards to maybe talk about how files should be broken up and which file sections should be provided. Because at least I found myself mainly needing the renderings, which were like the 100th sheet in the set.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
We do not have standards for that at this time. Our whole system will be changing up in the new year. I don't know if that will, what
Yeah.
impact it will have on that particular problem, but we can try to tackle that.
Well, and in general, I think, because very often, and understandably, applicants will give us what they're already producing as their work product. It would be, I think it would help me, at least it might help other members, maybe even staff in the review, if applicants had more summary documents as well to orient folks to the full application. Because like for large projects like this, where the site is broken up into 4 detailed sheets, and it becomes challenging to piece a
Yeah.
full picture together.
Thank you.
Good point.
All right, so the next ARB meeting is scheduled for December 2nd, 2024.
I plan to be here.
In here.
I'll be here.
Yep, me too. So
Okay.
sounds like we'll have a quorum. So in that case, this meeting is adjourned until our next meeting on Monday, December 2nd, 2024. It's 2:15 just about. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.